Hi, well this is the beginning of part 2 of this video on how to paint a still life. And I haven't looked at this painting for about 3 days, so let's see what we can see. So there's the subject. That's a very attractive photograph. It's very interesting. Those tomatoes are really standing out, and the combination of those tomatoes and the yellow ochre and the reflection on the ewer or vase or ceramic, whatever you want to call it, make this a very interesting subject. What I like about this is all those dings and blemishes on the wall behind. I love all the lines on that larger tomato. I love the contrast between the whites of that garlic and the rest of it. The shape of that ceramic and all the various blemishes everywhere. It makes for to me, a very exciting picture. Yeah, something enjoyable to look at. So let's move over to what we've done so far. I've just dabbed paint here and there to give a feel for all the dings on the wall, and there's variations in colour there. So we're getting some sort of impression about what we want to achieve. From this distance, the highlight on the ceramic looks pretty good, even though it's just, a few dabs of white paint. From the viewing distance, it's pretty effective. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do on that vase. This is all very basic stuff, and we'll have to get rid of that. Those white lines around the tomatoes were just placeholders, so I had an idea of the proper dimension of those tomatoes. What else? There's something not quite right with the positioning of the tomatoes on this tabletop. They need to be, the vase or the ceramic needs to be pushed back, or the tomatoes brought forward, because something doesn't look right about the relative positions of these objects here. So I need to fix that up. So what I use to try and get a classical feel, to try and do the sort of thing that the old masters used to do, is to try and achieve that effect, I use liquin. Now, liquin is very effective when you want to have transparent layers, and that's how the old masters, certainly of the Dutch period, maybe the 17th century and onwards, around that time, those intense colours, those intense blacks, and the feeling that somehow the light was glowing out of the painting was achieved by having multiple layers of paint. And the optical effects achieved having multiple layers, transparent layers of paint, was that the light would actually reflect back from each layer of paint, and that somehow made the surface look luminous. And you can only really achieve that effect by reproducing what the old masters used to do. I mean, if you look at this colour right now, it looks totally drab and washed out. to get that kind of, I mean, this is obviously just a photograph, but you can see that the colours here are far more intense than the colours over here. So obviously it will improve when I darken that, but Liquin actually seems to provide that luminescence when you have multiple layers of it, in multiple transparent layers. So this painting will probably be in 3 phases. I've done part 1, this is going to be part 2, and maybe I'll go to part 3. So in part 2 I'll just be applying paint straight from the tube, which is what I do. I use very little tubes, and I'll just be building up and defining these various objects. So I shall start doing that. But then later on I'll be using Liquin, and I'll probably start with the background and perhaps use various transparent layers of Liquin. Liquin is good in other ways. It provides a buttery consistency to the paint. It's very nice working with Liquin. It's a bit difficult working with Liquin Original, which is what I'm going to be using, to get fine detail, because it is buttery, so you don't get the kind of flow that you need with minute details. But it is good. It's going to be good for these large areas. It also is very fast drying. It forms a protective layer on the paint. So it provides extra durability. So in fact, it's a very good product, I think. There might be similar products, but I don't know about them. So I'll carry on working, and we'll see if we can end up with something looking a little bit more like that, and then I'll start laying on some Liquin. So in part 1 I exclusively use the Zorn palette, just those 4 colours: titanium white, carbon black, in my case spectrum red and yellow ochre. But I don't think I'm going to achieve all the colours I want just using the Zorn palette. Like there's a touch of green in the there's a green tomato. I think it'll be very tricky to get a green from the Zorn palette because there's no blue in it. So and these tomatoes, I think to do them justice, I think I need to do something rather more than the spectrum red. But I will start off with spectrum red and using paint straight from the palette, straight from the tube, and once again just using thin layers of paint. In fact, this paint has been sitting on my palette for some time, so there's some lumps in it, but paint is not cheap, so I don't like to waste it. So here there's a light reflection from this tomato. So the light is incident on this tomato and then it's reflecting back onto this other tomato. There's a bit of reflection from that tomato to this tomato. These reflections are way too white, so let's just knock them back a bit. So I'm going to use some sort of yellow because these tomatoes seem to have that yellowish inner glow. Actually, I just found some orange that's been lying around. So let's try some orange. Yes, yeah, that's good. I like it, that's good. So that reflection is a bit orangey. There's a bit of orange over here. Bit of orange over here. So as I paint, I'm actually looking at the picture constantly. I mean, I often paint holding a picture of the subject, but I can see it quite well here. Now I've got some permanent crimson lake here, which may or may not be the right colour, but I think it's looking quite good. Right in there's another tomato hiding in that gap. Well, I've been doing some work on mainly the tomatoes. I've tried to create all these contrasts between the white of the garlic and the darkness. In the end, I did use some liquid on the background in this session because it was flowing so well. And I've done some more work on the vase, on the ceramic. There's still a fair way to go. I couldn't get this level of detail that I want using the liquid, so the smoothness of the tomatoes is not to my satisfaction, and in the next session I shall do some rework all over using the absolute minimum of liquid. I think once you've started to use liquid, there's no going back. I don't think it'd be safe to just use the raw oil paint over the liquid. It probably is safe, but I will carry on using liquid from now on, but in much smaller quantities, so I can get the level of detail that I want. That wood looks fairly convincing. Those paint strokes have left a wood-like feel. So it's coming along okay, but there will be one more session.